It is root soup, winter soup. And I thank my wife for this. Cordelia and trees. She saw in the still water of the pond her silly, silly old face. No one else. That funny old face smiled up and she wiggled her finger in the cold water, and Cordelia was alone, except in the trees. Leaves floated lazy, half on top, half under the water, hardly drifting at all. An afternoon air was cold and cool. They're heading toward cold. Cold nights, they were coming. Soon them leaves will be cotched up and froze in. She knew that. Cotched good. The pond would be an ice sheet, then covered with fallen things, leaves and acorns and little branches, more leaves and other goods as fell. Person don't know if there might be, if it's there, they might could fall in. And she knew that. The critters that wandered there for a drink, they knew that too. They would have to tap, tap by hoof or claw on the icy shell to winter there, and soon after they'd eat snow or perish to the thirst. She knew that. The pond water stilled, and there was that old Cordelia face again, minnows swimming through it. Why, there she was. Couldn't see the scars. No, not like when she looked in a piering glass. No, no. Could see how one eye was a little sag. Could see her funny crook-back nose. Could see... Oh, fuss, she said, aloud. What's the point? What was the point? But his season was over. He's gone. He's done with, and good riddance to him. He who's given her that eye, that nose, that curly lip. She stirred the water again, chased the face away. The minnies scattered. She laughed. Walking, Cordelia gathered the woolly hunting jacket round herself. Real cold is coming. Time indeed for her root soup, her winter soup. She looked forward to those good smells as filled the cabin winters. She wanted to run, to do it quick. Hug the comfort, the wonder of the forever pot, the pot going down with eating, the pot filled up again with bits added, and essence from the stock pot, more chopped roots and other pieces from the cellar. The forever pot of root soup, God's good winter warmth. Another year, no one found her morel patch where it lay sprouting. The seasoned shrooms had been having difficulty here. I feel like I'm trapped in the corner. Let's see. The shrooms had been fine and plentiful, big-headed, tender and clean grown through the rot. And all hers for taken. The time gone. Someone had felled a stand of trees where the morels sprouted now. Someone builded maybe. Someone who give up and moved on, she figured. Maybe a long time gone. New growth had sprouted since and filled round the wasted logs lying there. Good. This season, hundreds more morels had spread across the moldering stumps between old cut and fallen logs. 1,000 more had spread to the damp forest floor where decay made a wet and fragrant bed. She'd shown that hunter, but none had found the place on their own. Not a one. None would. And the season was over. Cold come, pickin' done, she thought. Even these last smelled good as she added them to her sack. Long things they were, thick-brained and heavy with wet. The roadway parsnip she'd cultivated another place back in the deep woods. They, too, had had a good season. Each fat root had burrowed way down. Rich they were within the earth, their long finger ends rich. Deep, hairy roots spread wide, held the place in the ground. They didn't want to come up and out, but up and out they'd come, and she'd stocked her cellar. Cordelia loved the burlap's prickle on her shoulder like a game bag swinging with her walk, heavy with her potatoes, onions, her carrots, and her snips. Near home now with the last of the season's sweet things heavy in her bag, Cordelia couldn't wait to make a start. The chopping was first, a long part of it, but the heart of winter's soup. Scrubbing made it clean for the stock. The careful scraping, the paring, the cutting, the pieces shaped just right for the pot. The broth, the savor of the thing. Each thickness just right for the release of the flavor. God loved good soup, and Cordelia made good winter soup. At home now, she stoked the stove with the seasoned logs, last year's cut. She built sweet, laid the bed for slow, steady heat. She watched as the old logs, the large ones that had lain in the porchway shade through summer and early fall, caught flame by their ends and their barks. Daddy leggers came scampering into the fire's winking hell. Spiders twitched and ran. Old cocoons opened, wiggling. Well, that was not nice. She knew that, maybe. But all those little lives, she figured, they added to the savor. Gave favor to the scent. The earthy scent of God's good soup. She chopped into the dark of night. She scraped and parboiled, shaved, halved, and quartered. The scrapings, the bits, the heads, the tails, thin parsnip fingers she added to the stock pot. She crushed the herbs to free the essence and added them to the mix. And then, one more thing. The black iron shears hung heavy on her apron tie. She held the lantern ahead. The picnic basket swung free. Crooked in her other arm, the busted, withered one. A bottle of whiskey, sloshed, safely nested in a mess of torn rags and sphagnum. Fall leaves hushed in the dark. The shush, shush, shush of her foot sweeps spread among the trees. Night critters went quiet as she passed. She stepped off 100 paces up the hill and counted a little more to pass the time. She passed the pond. Another count took her beyond the shrooming patch. Except for her, the forest was still. And she didn't need light for the walk. Light was needed for the work. Down the cellar, in the dark of the cellar. The root cellar was where light was wanted. The oak plank door lay across the hole in the hillock. Civil War lock hung cold against the boards and hasp. Covered with leaves it was, and near invisible days. Part of the world at night. The lock snapped open. As she raised the door, the earth smell from below breathed over her. Earth and more. She descended the 4 steps. The light led her. Then came the noise. Iron against rock. The clatter cut the silence. A body moaned and rattled his iron bonds against his rock, his earthbound rock. Now, she hadn't known him. Just a huntsman has come walking through the woods, lost, asking. She offered a drink of whiskey and pointed his way. He came back, still lost. She said she'd lead, and then she asked his help. A little thing, please, so good as to be a help God gave to those who help. Some more whiskey, and he was in the chains like that. Those chains and more held him now to that rock below the world in her cellar. No man she knew, her light caught him now. He was white like a grub and naked. She'd left him blankets but no clothes to wear. He hung naked, hugging his rock. He looked up. He cried. Why, yes, oh Lord, yes. He did live underground like one of them things as wiggled under the rotted logs that fed her morels. She had to chuckle at that. His head was long and thin, not much face to him. Narrow, hook nose, a thin yellow beard. She hardly could see the yellow of her lantern. His head was flat on top. His teeth were busted crooked. He cried and he tried to stand. He stood and he dangled. She laughed again. Up top on the world, he wouldn't have cried. Oh, no. But she had things to do. She rolled the whiskey jar to him, then sat to watch. It took a time. He yelled, he cried, he made to throw the jar at her head. And she laughed. She laughed sweetly. Cordelia had a pretty laugh. A funny face, but a pretty laugh. The man blubbered. He shouted, "Why?" Other things, but the heart of it was, "Why?" "Drink," she said. "Drink, and it won't hurt." By and by he drank. Long pulls, tears coming between the gulps. Runny nose blubbers. In less than an hour, the screams were only hoarse bubbles. She clipped 3 fingers and some hand meat from him, a couple toes from his left foot. He screamed and he bled. She caught the blood in the mason jar and she capped it. She wrapped his hand and foot with sphagnum and left some more rags for him. She almost left, then she returned, and she scissored off a rasher of fat just round his gut, the flabby place. He screamed and bubbled, but then it was over. Leave the man oysters for later, she figured. Take him now, he'll lose spirit. Men! He's so silly and so sweet, she thought. They believe in their hearts, way down. Their lives, their God's spirit comes from there, down the root and sack between their legs. She left a few more rags in the bottle for him. The blood smelled rich. The thick warmth pillowed the earthy scent of the cellar. She hoped he'd be all right. She liked the blood aroma of this one. Later that night, the cries came all the way down to her cabin. Sighs, sobs, curses. She heard even as the pot came boiling. Even later, so much later, the screams. Long, far away echoes, as from a mountain across a valley, all the world's trees in between. Well, that must hurt, she thought, stirring soup. Oh, hurt don't last. She knew that much. Night was over, and light was through the trees, God peeking white through black. He touched his ground with his mighty eye. The pot had bubbled night long. The perfect heat she'd made had concentrated the liquor of the soup. Thin soup was now thick soup, rich soup, winter soup, dark, earthy, smelled so pretty now. Cordelia took another swipe with her spoon. Dark broth swirled among the roots and other things. She breathed its rich essence as she stirred. Turnips, potatoes, the spinning joint bones made dull taps against the iron pot. The carrots and the parsnips swirled. She tasted with her nose. The cabin air had gone winter. Just that one night, imagine that. Fire warmth and blessed God quiet filled the place. Her room was fragrant with chopped wood, spices, and the bite of soup and of winter. Except the morning whippoorwill, the woods were quiet. The cries were gone. They were all gone. She added the morels last, fried up the fat. She tasted the tip of the spoon. She sucked a hot spray of broth, her first savor of winter soup. Oh, it was good. After dark, she'd maybe take a jar to him down in the cellar. A little. Oh, she wanted him to last. It was going to be a long, long winter. She felt it in her bones.